After the fake wealthy daughter ran away from the wedding, I resolutely chose to substitute for her and get married. I originally thought I could enjoy the life of a wealthy family, but I didn't expect that after getting married, I was still forced to learn flower arrangement, social skills, and business management. Looking at my increasingly thin figure, I decided to run away together with the disabled master. At the very beginning of the wedding, I tripped and fell. It's a bit embarrassing to say. It was my first time getting married, and I didn't have much experience. I was even a little excited. The skirt of my wedding dress was too long, so I didn't see the steps. After stepping on empty air, I slipped and fell. In the end, the veil dropped. Everyone at the wedding ceremony gasped. My so-called father, who had been smiling like a chrysanthemum before, opened his mouth so wide that an egg could fit in it when he saw that the bride was me. What's going on? Isn't this the real daughter of the Duncan family who was just found? Then did the fake daughter run away from the wedding? Most people at the wedding were whispering and looking like they were watching a show. I could only brace myself and stand up. My father held back his anger and grabbed my arm. He interrogated me about the whereabouts of the real daughter. Judy, could I tell him? Of course not. I looked at Simon, who was wearing a suit and was extremely handsome. I secretly reached out and pinched my thigh hard. My eyes instantly turned red, and big tears fell down. Then I began my affectionate confession. Sister Judy ran away from the wedding, but I like Simon, so I'm willing to marry him. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the guests present changed unpredictably. Most people looked at me as if I were a fool, as the real daughter of the Duncan family who was just found. I have the blood of the Duncan family flowing in my body. As long as I'm obedient, I will surely have no worries about food and clothing and live a prosperous life in the future. Even if there is an arranged marriage in the future, it will be with a prestigious family in the capital like the Smith family. Simon is very good, but unfortunately, his legs were disabled when he was a child. In the wealthy family's power struggles, the affection between fathers and sons is even more indifferent. It is absolutely impossible for a disabled person to get the right of inheritance. He is an outcast who has been completely abandoned by the family. Even if he is used for an arranged marriage, he only deserves to marry girls from less prominent families. And yet, I actually rushed to marry him. My father was so angry that steam seemed to be coming out of his head. However, with so many guests present, he couldn't lose his temper. He could only ask me through gritted teeth. Are you really determined to marry him? As a strategist, I should be desperate for love. Even if the other person has a leg disability, I will still choose to marry him. Besides, after getting married, I won't be forced to learn flower arrangement, business management, and dance anymore. I'm really happy. When I first came to this world, the system told me that I had to woo Simon and make his favorability towards me reach 80% so that I could go home. The favorability is divided into 5 levels. 20% means the beginning of having a good impression, 40% is the start of liking, 60% is a complete crush, 80% is deep love, 100% is unswerving loyalty until death, which no one has been able to achieve so far. Therefore, according to the task requirements, as long as the favorability reaches 80%, the task can be judged as completed. Once the task is completed, I can also receive a task reward and get a large sum of money. Originally, I didn't plan to woo Simon anyway when I came to this world. My identity was already that of a wealthy daughter. According to my imagination, I should go shopping and have beauty treatments every day, and have afternoon tea with a few little sisters when I'm free. This should be the necessary life of a wealthy daughter. In reality, I was all alone in my original world, without any relatives or friends, so I might as well slack off here. Unfortunately, the idea was good, but the reality was too cruel. I returned to the Duncan family, however. On the first day I got home, I was ordered to lose weight by that insidious stepmother. She said that my waist was thick and those high-end custom-made wedding dresses wouldn't look good on me. Not only that, but she also signed me up for various courses necessary for a wealthy daughter: flower arrangement, piano, dance, horseback riding, tea brewing, etiquette. In less than a month, the light in my eyes was gone. The real life of a wealthy family is completely different from what I saw on TV. There is no delicate afternoon tea, and there is no endless credit card to swipe. All there is are endless courses and the never-ending 10,000-meter run. My legs really hurt, so I decisively ran away. To hell with being a wealthy daughter. I want to stay alive first. Then, I was caught by that vicious stepmother. Remembering those skills that a wealthy daughter must learn, after serious consideration, I decided to take the initiative to woo the master. Doing things for money is much better than enduring this kind of grievance here. I just happened to encounter the fake daughter running away from the wedding, and here came the opportunity. The wedding eventually went ahead, although the bride was changed at the last minute. The Lincoln family was obviously not very happy about it, but after all, I am also the real daughter of the Duncan family, so it doesn't disgrace their family. On the contrary, it can even strengthen the cooperation. For the Lincoln family, there are all advantages and no disadvantages. After a day of commotion, finally, it was time to enter the bridal chamber. For the sake of a smooth escape from the wedding, Judy specifically requested a vintage wedding. In the bridal chamber, Simon was already taking off his clothes on his own. "Do you want to take a shower?" Looking at my target to woo. I took the heavy crown off my head one step ahead and then eagerly ran up to him. Simon didn't say anything. And there was no expression on his face. It makes sense. After all, the person he originally wanted to marry wasn't me. Now that the bride was suddenly changed, I guess he was in a very gloomy mood, but for the sake of my task, I still decided to be very attentive. I ran to the bathroom and filled the bathtub with water for him first, then I pushed him and his wheelchair in. "Do you need my help?" I asked sincerely. He stopped the hand that was about to take off his clothes and looked at me as if he wanted to say something but held back. I'm not a reserved person, and I'm not afraid of getting bad luck. Getting married to complete the task can free me from those deadly necessary skills of a wealthy daughter. I'm willing to do anything. "Heidi, why did you marry me?" Simon said, his first words of the night. "Why? Because completing the task can get me back home, because the task reward can ensure that I have no worries about food and clothing for the rest of my life, and because I really don't want to learn those deadly skills anymore." These are all my true thoughts, so I squatted down, put my hands on his legs, and said to him affectionately, "Because I like you, I can be very good at saying love words." The tips of Simon's ears turned a little red. "Little guy, I can definitely charm you." I then seized the opportunity and rolled up my sleeves, wanting to pick him up. "What are you going to do?" He looked at me with some fear in his eyes, especially when my hands grasped the buttons of his pants. "Help you take a shower," I said it very seriously. Then, I was kicked out. Sigh. It didn't start well. Just as I was lying on the bed, thinking about how to woo this master in the future, a cry of pain suddenly came from the bathroom. I quickly pressed against the glass door and peeked inside, asking anxiously, "Simon, are you okay? Do you want me to come in and help?" Simon in the bathroom was silent for a long time. After a long while, he opened the door wrapped in a bath towel. His body was flushed, and it was constantly emitting hot steam. He almost squeezed the words out between his teeth. He said, "There's no need to be in such a hurry to murder your husband." I suddenly remembered that when I filled the bathtub with water for him, it seemed to be all boiling hot water. If Simon didn't test the water temperature when taking a shower, it would be a bit like a pig slaughtering scene. On the wedding night, there was still one very important thing left to do. I looked at Simon with a shy and timid expression. I'm not a reserved person. Although I never believe in love, I won't pretend to be reserved either. Especially Simon's face completely hits my heart. Now that we are married and have even got the marriage certificate, under the legitimate circumstances, with such good looks in front of me, something could still happen. "Simon, it's so late, don't you think we should go to bed?" I hinted very obviously. However, someone seemed to completely fail to understand my meaning and just nodded indifferently. Then he picked up a book in his hand and it seemed that he was going to read by the lamp at night. He's quite diligent. I'm not in a hurry either. Wooing the master also needs to be done slowly. Maybe the master is self-conscious because of his disability and he can't do it. I'm playing the role of a gentle and considerate modern version of Wang Baochuan. Naturally, I will agree with whatever Simon says. Early in the morning, as soon as I opened my eyes, I saw a magnified face in front of me, which scared me so much that I trembled all over. Oh, it turned out to be my dear mother-in-law. Simon was already gone, and the quilt beside me felt cold when I touched it. Is the family education of the Duncan family so lax? The Lady Lincoln was dressed in luxurious clothes. When she pointed at me, the huge diamond ring on her finger almost blinded my eyes. It is said that the relationship between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law is difficult to handle, but thinking that after getting married, I don't have to learn those deadly skills anymore, I suddenly wasn't afraid. Then, I realized I was wrong. I originally thought that after marrying into a wealthy family, my daily life would revolve around Simon. An arranged marriage is originally a combination of two families, and I just need to have a good relationship with Simon. Unfortunately, reality gave me a hard slap in the face. I looked at the Lady Lincoln who was arranging flowers in front of me. She was seriously explaining the flower arrangement skills to me. The words that came out of her mouth were like a lullaby. I couldn't help it. I was so sleepy that I just fell forward. My head hit the corner of the table, and I let out a cry of pain. That's not all, the Lady Lincoln said to me earnestly. You just returned to the Duncan family and recognized your ancestors, and then you married into our Lincoln family. There are surely many things you should learn that you haven't learned yet, but it doesn't matter. From now on, your mother-in-law will personally supervise your future courses. Under the kind and gentle gaze of my mother-in-law, I realized a fact. Even though I'm already married, I still can't escape the fate of having to study. After all, I married into a wealthy family, even though I am a wealthy daughter myself. In their eyes, a young lady who has just recognized her ancestors and returned to the family has no sense of etiquette at all and is completely unseemly. As the daughter-in-law of the Lincoln family, I can maintain a respectful relationship with Simon, or we can even sleep in separate rooms. The people of the Lincoln family won't care about these things, just like they don't care about their son Simon either. What they care about is whether I, as their daughter-in-law, can be presentable. Being a beautiful vase is their only requirement for me. However, I am still a long way from meeting their requirements now. For example, when holding a banquet, whether I can hold up the scene. If I trip and fall again like at the wedding, losing face. The Lincoln family will definitely be dissatisfied with me, so, the things I didn't finish learning in the Duncan family, I still have to learn them again even after getting married. I represent the face of the Lincoln family. Once I lose face, the Lincoln family will try every means to get rid of me. After all, the Lincoln family doesn't need an unseemly daughter-in-law. Then do I still have to run 10,000 meters? Just thinking about the 10,000-meter run made my legs tremble. My mother-in-law smiled and shook her head. I heaved a sigh of relief. At least there is still some humanity. 10,000 meters is a bit too little. Start with 20,000 meters every day. Consider it as losing weight, and you'll look better in clothes. As she spoke, my mother-in-law reached out and pinched the flesh around my waist. Just let me die, the kind that goes straight to paradise. I had thought of many kinds of married life. Just not like this, at 6 o'clock in the morning. I got out of bed under my mother-in-law's death stare. Then, under her guidance, I learned all kinds of elegant skills such as flower arrangement and tea brewing. I came back to take a nap at noon. In the afternoon, I carried my little school bag and went to the villa next door to learn dance and piano, getting up early and going to bed late. It's really not a life for a human being. I suddenly understood why Judy had to run away from the wedding, even though I'm married. I still can't escape the fate of having to study. In the evening, I returned to the room with trembling legs. Simon had already taken a shower. He was sitting in a wheelchair, holding a book in his hand, wearing gold-rimmed glasses. He looked like a gentle scoundrel. If I wasn't so physically and mentally exhausted now, I really wanted to tear open his shirt and see what kind of gentle scoundrel he was. Unfortunately, I was too tired, so even with such good looks in front of me, I couldn't have the slightest bad intention. I slumped on the sofa, and Simon wheeled his wheelchair over. Go take a hot bath first. He showed concern for me, which was rare. Remembering the inhumane torture of the past week or so, I grabbed Simon's hand all at once, with tears in my eyes. Simon, let's run away. At worst, I'll dig wild vegetables to support you in the future. I don't want this wealthy family life anymore. However, as soon as the words were out, my mother-in-law appeared at the door of the room. She smiled and waved at me, and her tone was incredibly gentle, but to me, it sounded like a death warrant. She said, Heidi, it's time for you to go for a night run. Yes, a 20,000-meter night run. After running, I could go directly to see the king of hell. In an instant, 2 lines of hot tears fell down, after running 20,000 meters. My legs were shaking uncontrollably. As soon as I entered the villa, I bumped into a strange man head-on. He was very handsome, especially those amorous and innocent peach blossom eyes, which could easily charm young girls at first glance. With just one look, I knew who the man in front of me was. Lucas, Simon's younger brother, and they were half-brothers. In wealthy families, siblings with the same father and mother are really rare. There are more of those siblings who seem friendly on the surface but stab you in the back. I didn't know what kind of person Lucas was, but it was always right to be cautious, so I didn't say a word to him and planned to just ignore him and go back to my room. However, Just as I took 2 steps forward, Lucas directly reached out his hand to stop me. "Can't sister-in-law see me?" I have to say, the voice of this handsome guy was really nice. It was much better than his brother's cold tone. But unfortunately, I'm not the type to be swayed by this, so in response to Lucas's question, I calmly asked back, "Do I need to say, 'Hello, brother-in-law,' to you?" He was taken aback by my words, the smile on his face clearly froze, and then he continued to smile, even getting closer to me. At first glance, he had ill intentions. "Why is sister-in-law so heartless? After all, I'm your brother-in-law." He spoke as if he was extremely wronged, as if I had done something extremely heinous to him. It was just like a peacock spreading its feathers. I gave him an annoyed look and planned to just bypass him, but Lucas actually reached out and grabbed my arm, gave it a hard tug, and directly pressed me against the doorframe. "Lucas, what do you want?" I could ignore the previous little skirmish, but this position, if it was seen by other members of the Lincoln family, I wouldn't be able to clear my name even if I jumped into the Yellow River. "I just want to say something to sister-in-law." That damned Lucas reached out and played with my hair, even bringing it to his nose and smelling it. He looked like a pervert. Just as I was gathering strength to kick him, I heard Simon's voice from the staircase. "Heidi, come back to the room with me." As soon as Simon appeared, Lucas immediately let go of his hand. He still looked at me and smiled, but this smile was somehow a bit creepy. Back in the room, Simon had a sullen face, and I could clearly feel that he was very unhappy. I walked up to him, squatted down halfway, and then looked up at him. "Do you not like me talking to him?" The disabled master in front of me was my target to win over, and I had to prioritize his preferences. Simon pursed his lips, his expression unfathomable. After a long while, he reached out and pinched my chin, his tone as cold as ever. "Stay away from him, it's for your own good." So, was he showing concern for me? After realizing this fact, I quickly took the opportunity and grabbed his wrist, rubbing my cheek against his palm. "I will listen to everything you say, Simon." My voice was sickeningly sweet. Simon, who had been keeping a straight face, suddenly stiffened all over. Perhaps to hide his embarrassment at this moment, he deliberately put on a stern face and scolded, "Speak properly," in order to figure out the situation of the Lincoln family. I tried to find out some information by making veiled inquiries while learning flower arrangement from Lady Lincoln. Only then did I know that the situation of the Lincoln family was extremely complicated. When Mr. Lincoln was young and frivolous, he was unwilling to accept the family's arranged marriage. He wanted to pursue his own love and even eloped with Simon's mother for a while. However, they couldn't withstand the power of the wealthy family, and the two were caught and brought back. Mr. Lincoln was forced to get married. Simon's mother was heartbroken but found out that she was pregnant and secretly gave birth to the child. Unfortunately, a few years later, Simon's mother was seriously ill and had no choice but to send Simon back to the Lincoln family. But at that time, Lucas had already been born and he deeply hated this elder brother who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, especially when his own mother was about to give birth, so he was very reluctant to let Simon come back. Mr. Lincoln was very determined to let the child born to his first love recognize his ancestors. After a lot of wrangling, Lucas's mother was so angry that she had a massive hemorrhage and died in the delivery room, and the newly born daughter also died prematurely. Since then, Lucas and Simon have become sworn enemies. As for the current Lady Lincoln, she was the wife that Mr. Lincoln remarried under the family's request. Lady Lincoln has no children, so she treats Simon and Lucas equally. But Simon's legs were injured, and he could only sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. In the huge Lincoln family, everyone tacitly agreed that the next heir would be Lucas. The next morning, Lady Lincoln told me that she was going abroad and would probably be back in a week. I was so happy that I almost jumped up on the spot. Under Lady Lincoln's slightly suspicious gaze, I forcefully suppressed the upward curve of my mouth. I grabbed Lady Lincoln's hand and kept sighing, "Mother-in-law, I don't want you to go." Perhaps my appearance was too sincere, which made Lady Lincoln actually hesitate for a while. "Well, maybe I shouldn't go. I really wanted to punch myself. Having a loose tongue is a disease that needs to be cured as soon as possible." Fortunately, Lady Lincoln only hesitated slightly. She was also involved in the family business, so this trip was necessary. Without Lady Lincoln's supervision, those damned etiquette courses could go to hell. In the afternoon, the sun was just right. If Lady Lincoln were here, she would take me to practice calligraphy. There would be no time at all for me to cultivate my relationship with Simon. Taking this opportunity, I pushed Simon to the backyard to bask in the sun and cultivate our relationship. By the way, just as I was about to start flirting, that annoying Lucas followed us out again. He just wouldn't leave me alone, sister-in-law. In front of Simon, he unabashedly winked at me. Ugh, I almost got goosebumps. I turned my face away without changing my expression and happened to find Simon staring straight at me. I suddenly remembered what he said last night and realized that this was a great opportunity, right in front of that annoying Lucas. I held Simon's hand and even showed it off to him on purpose. Then I turned to look at Simon, looking like I was asking for praise. I originally thought that Lucas, seeing my attitude, would have some self-awareness, but I didn't expect that he was really shameless. Lucas slowly walked up to me, and his eyes suddenly became pitying. Sister-in-law is really pitiful, with big brother's legs in this state. I'm afraid he can't give you the happiness you want. We are all adults, and the hidden meaning in his words was easily understood. Thinking of my task, I immediately took this opportunity to show my sincere feelings. You're joking, brother-in-law, your big brother is very heroic. As I spoke, I deliberately reached out my hand to cover my cheek and put on a shy look. Simon, who hadn't spoken all this time, looked at me with a complicated expression, almost as if he wanted to say something but held back. Even Lucas didn't expect that I would speak so boldly. Is that so? After seeing off that annoying guy, Simon pulled my hand and made me squat down in front of him. I looked up at him. What's wrong? Ahem, watch what you say. Simon seemed to have great difficulty saying these words. I held back my laughter and directly rested my head on his legs. These are all my heartfelt words. I really like you, and I'm very happy to be with you. Simon, I like you. Favorability value reaches 20%. The moment my words fell, a mechanical voice suddenly rang out in my mind. A 20% favorability value meant that Simon had started to gradually have a good impression of me. The smile on my face suddenly deepened, and then I gave him a series of compliments. Simon's face turned from red to white, and finally he pretended to be angry out of embarrassment. He was really adorable. After this first breakthrough, I gradually found that Simon was a bit of a closet romantic. On the surface, he seemed cold and refined, especially with those gold-rimmed glasses, which made him look even more like a gentle scoundrel, but in fact, he was a pure-hearted young man who blushed easily when flirted with, especially when I kept saying sweet words. He simply couldn't resist. Even though his face remained cold, the tips of his ears that were so red they seemed about to bleed had completely betrayed his emotions at this moment. With this breakthrough, I tried my best during this week. However, the favorability value didn't change at all. The happy week was coming to an end. Lady Lincoln came back and even brought me a rival in love. Lady Lincoln has never had a child in her life, so she doted on her niece from her natal family to the core. This time when she returned to the Lincoln family, she specifically brought this little niece to stay for a few days. The first time I saw Wendy, I knew that this girl was not easy to get along with. The hostility in her eyes was too obvious, especially when she learned that I was Simon's newly married wife. Her face dropped, but the moment Simon appeared, she instantly changed her expression, putting on a cute and charming look. She directly stepped forward and took Simon's arm, sweetly calling him brother. Ugh, it was so sickening, and Simon actually smiled at her. The nerve of him, didn't he know he had a wife? I clasped my hands in front of me and looked at this, lovebirds, in front of me. The resentful aura spread throughout the living room. That scoundrel Lucas walked past me with a glass of juice in his hand, not forgetting to leave a sentence. Poor sister-in-law, my big brother doesn't want you anymore. I had endured his provocations several times before. This time I really couldn't hold it in anymore, so I simply grabbed Lucas's collar and forced him to stop in front of me. Do you know what you look like? Under Lucas's confused gaze, I reached out and patted his shoulder. You look just like those uncles and aunts who watch the show while munching on sunflower seeds. He had nothing better to do and had a really annoying mouth. In the evening, when I returned to the bedroom, Simon was still reading that book as always. I really couldn't figure out why, with a beautiful woman like me standing in front of him, he preferred that lousy book, especially when that delicate Wendy appeared today. He even smiled. Perhaps my resentful gaze was too obvious. Simon finally couldn't help but put down the book and turned to look at me. What's wrong? How dare he ask me what's wrong? I jumped off the bed with a whoosh and ran all the way to him. Simon was sitting on the sofa at this time, and I decisively sat on his lap. Do you know that you have a wife? I grabbed his collar and questioned him. Simon's ears visibly turned red. After all, This sitting position was really hard for a pure-hearted young man to resist. I know, Simon quickly lowered his eyes, not daring to look at me, just as I was about to accuse him of what he did today. There was a knock on the door. Brother Lin, I made you a bowl of ginseng tea. My resentful aura spread again. This time even Simon could clearly feel it. I deliberately imitated Wendy's tone of voice and kept getting closer to Simon. When I was almost pressed against him, I said, Brother Lin, do you want some tea? Simon stiffened all over. Just as he was about to speak, I quickly leaned down and planted a kiss on his lips. Simon honey, do you want it? Favorability value reaches 40%. Wow, one kiss directly doubled the favorability value. My eyes lit up instantly. I held Simon down and quickly kissed him several times on the face. Unfortunately, the favorability value didn't increase at all. Just as I was feeling a bit discouraged, the door was suddenly opened from the outside. Wendy walked in with the tea in her hand and saw the intimate scene of me and Simon sitting on the sofa at a glance. She was struck dumb as if by lightning, dropped the tea in her hand, and rushed towards me directly. Heidi, you bitch. I was so angry that I laughed. I grabbed Wendy's hair and pulled it hard. She let out a cry of pain, but I still didn't let go. I'm being intimate with my husband. What are you so jealous about? Could it be that you want to be a mistress? I spoke very bluntly. The things that were originally hidden in the dark and couldn't be seen were suddenly exposed. Wendy's face turned extremely ugly, and she even wanted to reach out and hit me. Simon sat quietly on the sofa, like a tool person. Of course, I wouldn't let him watch the show like this, so I took the initiative to put my arm around Simon's neck and imitated Wendy's affected voice and asked Simon, husband, do you like her? I kept tightening my arms. If he dared to say, yes, I would dare to strangle him. He could not like me or even play around, but he definitely couldn't be intimate or ambiguous with other women under the premise that our marriage relationship still existed. Otherwise, would really strangle him. At worst, the task would fail. So what? Perhaps the threatening look in my eyes was too obvious. Simon, for the first time, looked directly at me and said something that was actually quite pleasant to hear. I like you. A 40% favorability value. It was indeed the beginning of liking. It felt like completing the task was already within reach. After more than a month of brutal training in various courses, Lady Lincoln finally nodded in satisfaction when she was checking my progress. The life of a wealthy socialite is truly not something everyone can endure. This made me even more determined to complete the task. Perhaps because of my good performance, Lady Lincoln said she would take me to a banquet. This would be my first public appearance as Mrs. Lin in the circle of wealthy socialites, so Lady Lincoln repeatedly warned me not to make any mistakes, otherwise, I might as well prepare myself for the consequences. Simon didn't come with us, due to his physical disability. He often preferred to stay at home. As for that peacock, Lucas, who couldn't go a day without showing off, he arrived at the banquet earlier than us. The dinner party of the aristocracy was decorated so grandly with golden hues that it almost blinded my eyes. Lady Lincoln dragged me into her social circle and promoted me just like selling a product. By the end of the night, I had gained 7 or 8 true best friends, and more than a dozen aunts who said they wanted to treat me like their own daughter. My face was so stiff from all the smiling. Just as I was about to find a corner to rest, I turned around and bumped into a waiter. A few drops of red wine spilled from the tray he was carrying. I happened to be wearing a white dress, and the wine stains were very obvious, but for such a banquet, I naturally wouldn't prepare only one dress. Under Lady Lincoln's slightly dissatisfied gaze, I reluctantly went upstairs to the private room to change my dress. Just as I took off my clothes, I heard a soft click from the doorknob, perhaps out of my usual vigilance. I quickly pulled up my dress and put on a shawl. Wrapping myself up tightly, there was Lucas again. Sister-in-law, why did you stop changing? He had that annoying smile on his face, making me want to punch him. I'm changing clothes, please leave. This was the first time I didn't joke around with him. I knew that his previous teasing was just to annoy Simon, but this time, he clearly wanted to ruin my reputation. If others found out that the sister-in-law and brother-in-law were alone in a room and in disarray, what would people think? Especially, what about my task? Simon was the only person I could rely on now. For the task reward, I would remain faithful to him and defend my innocence at all costs. Sister-in-law, what's so good about that cripple Simon? What can he give you? He's so cold and never says a word. Aren't you lonely? Shut up. Once I complete the task, I'll get a huge reward. then I'll have mountains of gold and silver in front of me. Those will all be mine, clearly. This peacock in front of me wanted to ruin my future happiness, so without hesitation, I picked up the mop in the corner and threw it at him, hitting him right on the nose. Take that, you show off. The news that Lucas was beaten spread throughout the banquet like wildfire, but no one knew who had done it. After all, he was too embarrassed to say, for the rest of the banquet. He glared at me angrily several times with his slightly crooked nose, enduring the jeers of the crowd. I took it all in and even waved my fist at him. Did you hit Lucas's nose? Simon asked me directly as soon as we got home that night, under his scrutinizing gaze. I nodded without blushing. My brother-in-law was out of line. As his sister-in-law, of course, I had to teach him a lesson. With that said, Simon surely understood what I meant, but he still remained silent. It made me wonder if he still had feelings for his brother, when I went to draw his bathwater that night. Simon suddenly said from behind me, "Well done." I was taken aback and turned to look at him, meeting his deep black eyes. We both smiled at each other. For the first time, I felt a connection with him, but why couldn't his favorability rating go up a bit more? It was really frustrating. As it turned out, an opportunity presented itself the next day. I finally had a half day off in the afternoon and could just stay at home and binge-watch dramas. Simon was taking a nap, and I didn't want to disturb him, so I sat in the living room alone, snacking and watching TV. Wendy, who had just come back from shopping, started mocking me as soon as she saw me. I couldn't be bothered with her. People like her just have no self-awareness and always think other people's things are better. A daughter who was abandoned for decades and now sent to the Lincoln family like a discarded item. How pitiful. Before, she would make veiled insults, but now she was being outright. Did she really think I wouldn't fight back? I held the remote control in my hand and gave her a look of disdain. At least I'm better than someone who wants to be a mistress. That shut her up. Wendy was so angry that she dropped her shopping bags, walked up to me in her high heels, and blocked my view of the TV, forcing me to look at her. It's only because you're so obsessed with that good-for-nothing. Do you really think I'm competing with you? Ah, this was interesting. I immediately sat up straight. Let me tell you, my Wang family's background is no worse than your Duncan family's. Simon is nothing special. Why would I care about him? His legs are disabled for life and he'll never walk again. Only a fool like you would stick with him. That was really harsh. Just as I was about to teach her a lesson, I suddenly saw a black figure at the corner of the staircase, so I quickly changed my tune. Maybe he's not good enough for you, but I like Simon. Even if he's disabled for life, I still want to be with him forever. Wendy, you can't be like this. What if one day you get hit by a car because you don't look at the traffic lights? Then I hope everyone will hate you and curse you. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw that the black figure was still there, so I stood up from the sofa firmly and said, when I like someone, it's for life, so I'll stay with him forever. Yes, forever. Forever in this world, once I complete the task. This life will be over, so it doesn't really go against my oath or my promise to him. I said all this without batting an eyelid. Wendy in the living room was silent for a long time. I started to wonder what she was up to. Then she looked towards the staircase. Brother Lin, I won this bet, sister-in-law. She really loves you. In an instant, I was stunned. Simon came out from the staircase in his wheelchair with a complicated expression, and Wendy, who had always been at odds with me, completely changed her demeanor and became gentle and amiable. She told me that it was all just a bet. She bet that I really loved Simon, so she deliberately got close to him several times to make me jealous. God knows. I was just worried she would mess up my task. Just as I rushed to Simon to complain that he didn't trust me, that mechanical voice rang out in my mind again. Favorability value reaches 60. Had he completely fallen for me? I couldn't say anything more. I was in a daze. Simon reached out and gently touched my head. He smiled at me, his ears still red as can be. Heidi, I like you too. This misunderstanding ended with Simon taking me to a restaurant for my birthday. I had casually mentioned to him once that it was my birthday. I didn't think he would remember, and even I didn't really care about it, but to my surprise, he did remember. He had prepared a candlelit dinner in advance. Simon looked even more handsome under the soft light. This cake was specially made for you. It won't make you gain weight. Simon asked me to make a wish. Under his expectant gaze, I slowly closed my eyes. I hope both you and I can get what we want. When I opened my eyes, I leaned on his arm and rested my head on his shoulder. Next time, can you make a cake for me? It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want one made by you. I said it on a whim. Unfortunately, Simon didn't respond. Instead, he took out a small, exquisite box from his pocket. It was a diamond bracelet he had carefully chosen for me. It was so delicate and expensive, clearly something he had put a lot of effort into getting. It almost made me really fall for him. Why are you being so nice to me all of a sudden? I really wasn't used to it. Looking at the beautiful bracelet on my wrist, I couldn't help but ask, because you're my wife. Wife, it was a heavy word. In this world, I was indeed his wife, and I would play the role well, so I held his hand in return and smiled at him. Thank you. The expected prompt didn't come. Clearly, our relationship still hadn't reached the level of deep love, but it didn't matter. I was confident I could keep going, but I didn't expect that I would keep going for a whole year, for an entire year. I never heard that prompt again. Even though Simon was getting better and better to me, the love in his heart never exceeded 60%. I couldn't figure it out. No matter what I did, it seemed to be in vain. There was one good thing, though. Lady Lincoln no longer watched over me every day like she did when I first married into the family, forcing me to learn all those skills of a wealthy daughter. Instead, she started focusing on my belly. She said that since I had been married into the Lincoln family for a year, it was time to have a child, but this kind of thing wasn't up to me alone. After all, the other party still slept on his side of the bed every night, keeping a clear boundary with me. I was almost ready to just rip his clothes off. As Lady Lincoln's nagging got worse, Mr. Lincoln came back. The Mr. Lincoln who had been living abroad all year and rarely came home finally remembered that he had a family waiting for him. The first thing he noticed when he saw me was also my belly. Still no news. Under his expectant gaze, I shook my head. Mr. Lincoln sighed and handed me a large box. Inside was a doll carved entirely out of gold. This is a welcome gift for you. When Lady Lincoln saw it, she pinched his arm. Who gives their daughter-in-law a gold doll as a welcome gift? Aren't you afraid it's too tacky? Seeing that Lady Lincoln was about to take it, I quickly hugged the gold doll to my chest. It's not tacky. I love gold. No, I love dolls. To be honest, I've always thought gold was more valuable than diamonds. This exquisitely carved gold doll would sell for at least tens of millions. I planned to keep it safe. That night, just as I was thinking about where to put it, Simon suddenly appeared behind me. Do you like children that much? I nodded vigorously. Who wouldn't like a doll made of gold? Apparently, he misunderstood me. He turned me around, looked at me seriously, and said, "If you really want one, we can start preparing." Did he mean what I thought he meant? How do we prepare? Both of our eyes instinctively looked at the soft, wide bed in front of us. So, could I finally make a move on him tonight? I was a little excited just thinking about it, but it didn't happen. Just when Simon finally relented, my period came a week early. I blamed myself for being greedy and eating too much ice. It was a real disappointment, but it was okay. I counted on my fingers. In about a week, I could try again. With this new connection, I didn't believe his favorability rating wouldn't change. However, that day never came. At the dinner table, Mr. Lincoln's gaze towards Simon became increasingly kind, and he was also very gentle with me. His words were filled with the hope that I would quickly give birth to a child for the Lincoln family. In this way, the Lincoln family would have an heir, and he wouldn't have to work until his hair turned completely white. Everyone tacitly agreed that the heir to the Lincoln family was Lucas. After all, he was a healthy person. Plus, as the legitimate son, it was only natural that he should inherit the family business. However, it was clear that Mr. Lincoln didn't think so. He even ignored Lucas's resentful gaze without any attempt to hide his intentions. I vaguely guessed that something big was about to happen in the Lincoln family, but I never imagined that it would target Simon and me first. It was my birthday again. Simon had booked a restaurant in advance and promised to take me out on a date. After a week, my period finally ended. The atmosphere was so perfect that we both knew something was going to happen that night. Why isn't there a cake this year? I couldn't help but ask as we were almost done with the meal and still hadn't seen the cake. The cake was delivered to our home. We'll have it when we get back, Simon said. His eyes pausing for a moment before he replied in his usual calm tone. I nodded and didn't think much of it. After dinner, I pushed Simon out of the restaurant. Just as I was thinking about taking a stroll in the nearby square, several men in black suddenly rushed towards us. They pushed me away and tried to drag Simon, who was in a wheelchair, away. I definitely wouldn't let them take Simon. After all, he was the only target I needed to successfully win over. So I desperately fought with those men in black and shouted at the top of my lungs. This was a busy downtown area, and as long as I held on for a while longer, someone would surely come to help. During the struggle, Simon fell to the ground. Since his legs were completely numb, he could only watch helplessly as I pushed and shoved with the men in black. He couldn't even sit up. Heidi, seeing many people approaching, the men in black realized the situation was bad. They actually grabbed my arms and abducted me. Looking at Simon, who was still struggling on the spot, I felt a mix of emotions. Even at this point, why hadn't his favorability rating changed at all? It was obvious that I had been kidnapped, and it was Lucas, that peacock, who always loved to show off. Who did it? I didn't know what had gotten into him to come up with such a crazy idea. After all, doing such a thing was likely to leave evidence, and once discovered, his entire life would be ruined. Mr. Lincoln would definitely not let him off. I was tied up tightly to a chair, and Lucas looked completely deranged. In fact, I had thought he was crazy for a long time. After all, a normal person would never flirt with their sister-in-law like that. Now, he was even more insane, resorting to kidnapping. Lucas dragged a knife across my face, and the cold blade left a terrifying sensation on my cheeks. I admitted I was scared, but I didn't dare to show it. After all, a psychopath like him enjoyed seeing others cry and suffer. Lucas grabbed my neck and demanded, "Heidi, what's so good about that cripple? Why do you love him so much that you're willing to be kidnapped for him?" If my mouth hadn't been gagged, I would have cursed at him. Who the hell said I was willing? 5 or 6 bodyguards, all a head taller than me, easily grabbed my arms and stuffed me into a car. From start to finish, when was I willing? Lucas seemed to realize that I couldn't respond with my mouth gagged, so he tore off the cloth. My cheeks were sore, and I couldn't stop the drool from flowing. "Tell me, why did you save him?" The peacock had completely lost his mind. He was choking my neck so hard it hurt. I didn't want to save him either. But in that situation, if Simon was kidnapped and killed, my mission would be a complete failure. Since I had to take a risk, I might as well bet on whether I had the female lead halo. Turns out, I didn't have the female lead halo, but someone who came to die did show up. Simon, whom I had risked everything to save, actually came to this abandoned factory alone. "Let her go, aren't you after me?" I was touched that he came to save me, but for this suicidal act. If I hadn't been tied to the chair, I really would have killed him. Lucas had gone completely insane. He laughed maniacally, doubling over with laughter. "I originally just wanted to take a gamble, so I sent you a message. If you dared to come alone, I would let Heidi go. So that's how it was." My heart suddenly felt stuffy. "I'm here, let her go." Lucas didn't go back on his word. He actually untied the ropes binding me right in front of him. After all, with a woman and a disabled Simon, there was no way we could escape, so he confidently let me go. After the ropes were untied, I watched as Simon slowly rolled towards me in his wheelchair. "You didn't have to save me." If he had given up on me, he could have survived and even used this opportunity to completely defeat Lucas. Then, in the huge Lincoln family, he would be the only heir left. Over the past year, I had seen through the cold and calculating nature of the wealthy family. I thought he would be the same as the others, putting interests first. Simon stopped in front of me in his wheelchair and gently stroked my face. "But I have to protect you, with his life." What a fool. Simon had come fully prepared, but apparently, he had underestimated how crazy Lucas had become. Dynamite was planted all around the abandoned factory. Those explosive packs, obtained from who knows where, were enough to destroy the entire factory and kill everyone inside within 10 seconds. If he couldn't have what he wanted, no one else would either. Let's all be destroyed together. He was a complete lunatic. So, even though he had brought enough men, they didn't dare to approach easily. After all, one wrong move could cost all their lives. Lucas held a knife and slashed hard at Simon's arm. I wanted to stop him, but before I could stand up, Lucas took out a remote control. Once the red button was pressed, the entire factory would be reduced to ashes in an instant, and everyone would die. "If you come any closer, I'll press it. We might as well die together." Lucas was too crazy. I knew he wasn't bluffing, so I didn't dare to move. I could only watch as the sharp knife slashed at Simon again and again. His gray-brown trench coat was gradually soaked in blood. "If you keep going, he'll die." I couldn't help but shout. Since we were all going to die anyway, I might as well take Lucas down with me. Lucas's hand paused for a moment. Then he turned his ferocious gaze towards me. "What, do you want to die with him too?" As he spoke, he pointed the tip of the knife at me. He held the remote control in one hand and the knife in the other. Under this double threat, no one dared to move, and we could only let him do as he pleased. I decided to take a chance and try to snatch the remote control from him. Otherwise, with Lucas in control, Simon and I were doomed. 3, 2, 1. I pounced on him, pinning him down. Caught off guard, he hit the ground hard. I quickly snatched the remote control from his hand and turned to run. As long as I could get the remote control out, the people waiting outside could subdue Lucas. That's what I thought. However, Lucas was truly a madman, completely insane, ignoring the pain. He chased after me with the knife in his hand. The moment I handed the remote control out, someone grabbed my shoulder, and I fell to the ground. The raised tip of the knife was aimed at my chest. I thought it was the end for me. But then warm blood sprayed down, and I felt a heavy weight on my shoulder. Simon was dead. To save me, he took the fatal blow. He held me tightly in his arms, seeing me in a daze. He even reached out and touched my head. Heidi, don't be afraid. Looking at him, my heart suddenly ached terribly. Looking at the blood-covered Simon in front of me, I couldn't remember the so-called mission. I was completely stunned. As if a piece of my heart had been torn out. I didn't understand. Why was Simon willing to give up his life for me? Lucas was subdued, but he was still laughing maniacally, disgusting and hateful, and Simon, leaning close to my ear, said his last words, I know you've always wanted to go home. We'll make it happen for you. As soon as the words fell, a mechanical voice rang out in my mind, cheering in a way different from before. Congratulations, host, mission completed. Favorability rating, 100. Simon's monologue. I fell in love with Heidi at first sight, even though I knew that the carefully staged hero saves the beauty was just a trap set for me. I still fell for it. I didn't tell anyone that I could hear Heidi's thoughts, so on our wedding day, when she said she liked me, I tried my best to ignore her true feelings. I knew Heidi wanted to go home. Preferably with a large sum of money. She was such a little money grubber, but that was okay. If she wanted money, I could give her all my shares. My father always thought he owed me, so he wanted to give me the entire group as compensation. I used to disdain it, but now that I had this little money grubber by my side, I went to my father and said I was willing to take over the group, without Heidi knowing. I had already transferred all my shares and property to her name. I knew Heidi hated those so-called etiquette courses in the wealthy family, so I secretly talked to my mother. Without the constraints of these rules, Heidi was much happier. Every day, she just thought about how to win me over. Her warm and sincere gaze was only focused on me. I really loved this feeling. I was greedy and despicable, so I tried my best to control my emotions, as long as my true feelings didn't leak out too strongly. The so-called detection system wouldn't notice. My feelings for Heidi had long exceeded 100%. The first time she seriously said she liked me, I couldn't help but show my emotions. The first time she kissed me, my heart was pounding. When she firmly said she would stay by my side forever, I believed her. It took all my strength to keep my love at 60%. After that, every day, I tried my best to control myself. As long as the favorability rating didn't increase, my Heidi would stay by my side. I knew this was a despicable thing to do. But I just wanted to take a chance. I spent a year trying to give myself an opportunity. Maybe it was because I liked her too much, so my gaze was always on her. She didn't seem to trust anyone. All her outward emotions were just a disguise. She didn't believe in love, and she didn't believe in me either. But it didn't matter. One day, I would teach her how to love. I thought we would have a lot of time together. However, Lucas went crazy and tried to kidnap me. Heidi saved me but was captured by him instead. My father told me not to act rashly, saying she was just a woman. I asked him with red eyes, if it was my mother who was kidnapped, would you still be so calm? My father, who loved my mother deeply, finally let me go in silence. Since he couldn't do it himself, how could he expect me to? So I went. I was determined to save her. Fortunately, I succeeded. When the knife stabbed into my chest, it really hurt, but looking at the tears in her eyes, I suddenly thought it was all worth it. It's just a pity that I didn't get the chance to teach her how to love. What a pity. Then let her go. Finally, I could freely express the love in my heart. Listening to the prompt of the mission completion, my Heidi could finally go home. Heidi's perspective. I don't understand why someone would be willing to die for another person. What exactly is 100% love? I've thought about this question for far too long. but even if I rack my brain, I still can't figure it out. Simon is gone. Looking at his small remains in the urn, my heart aches unbearably. How could someone who was once so full of life disappear just like that? I returned home in a daze. The moment I opened the door to my room, I noticed traces of Simon's careful arrangements. There was an ugly, cute cake placed on the tea table, with the words, "Happy Birthday, my Heidi," written on it. Memories of that near-death experience came flooding back. That silly man had remembered a casual comment I made a year ago. The cake was too sweet. It made my heart tremble with sweetness, but I still ate it all, bit by bit. It seemed that only in this way could I feel a little better. Life without Simon doesn't seem all that different, really. The members of the Lincoln family treat me very well, even though their grief is palpable. They never show it in front of me. They seem to think I'm the one who's more devastated, but am I? I truly don't know. From the very beginning, I've known that I'm a heartless person, but why does my heart hurt so much? I'm too afraid to consider the only possible answer. Simon left me a large sum of money and shares. Even if I hadn't completed my mission, I could have lived happily in this world for the rest of my life, free from any constraints. What a fool he was, leaving me all this money. Wasn't he afraid that I'd use his money to support a bunch of young men and live a carefree life? I would never fall for a fool, but when the system asked me if I wanted to return to the real world, I hesitated. Should I go back? Go back to a world where no one cares about me, or stay in this virtual world and keep the promise I once made to someone? On an impulse, I chose the latter. After all, with the large sum of money Simon left me, I could still live a good life. I used the money to travel the world and see sights I'd never seen before. I also went to State Y in Country M. It was many years later, on an uninhabited island in State Y, in a castle surrounded by blooming roses, I saw Judy. She was alone, guarding the castle, happy and free. When Judy looked at me, she said she saw an indelible sadness in my eyes. Sadness? What is sadness? Judy shook her head and didn't answer my question. Instead, she picked the most vibrant rose from her flower garden for me. "From now on, love yourself well," she said with sincere blessings. I looked at her. Against the backdrop of the flowers, she was as beautiful as ever. "Judy, are you happy?" For some reason, I really wanted to ask this question. Judy didn't answer me, but the ease and tranquility in her eyes were undeniable. "Charles, aren't you waiting for him anymore?" I asked. That young man who had promised to come and see her when he turned 30, now that the appointed time had passed, he still hadn't shown up. The Smith family was the leading family in the capital, and Charles was the destined heir. With his complicated background, he didn't have the right to defy fate. One must always look forward in life, Judy said, her eyes clear, and, even when she mentioned Charles and those 10 years, there was no trace of sadness in her. She lived a carefree life, and I found myself a little envious of her. I left the manor with the blooming rose. Just as I was about to leave, I saw Charles standing at the entrance of the manor. He was more composed than he had been 10 years ago, and the light in his eyes seemed to have never gone out. I turned to look at Judy, who was still busy in the flower garden. It was wonderful. This was probably what they meant in books when they said, "Where true lovers finally get together." But what about my true love? I suddenly thought of Simon, who had died in front of me. The wind blew, and I realized that my face was already covered in tears, after hearing the story above. What are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.